Today we're going to talk about managing, leading performance in times of uncertainty. And we'll be taking a few questions as we go. So I'm really looking forward to spending time with you and seeing what we can do together. I'm going to try to move a couple of things around here on the screen before I get going. Let's see what I can do. Thank you for letting me do this. So I'm going to stop the video now. Let's just dive into it. And when we start talking, doing questions and things like that, then I'll come back on if that's important to people. Today in the Bay Area is day 21 of shelter in place. And, I don't know how everyone else is doing it. It's pretty dramatic here. And it's kind of important to not only what we're doing now, but what we're going to do in the future. So our lives are changing as we all sit here on this session today. And we're going to talk a little bit about moving from concepts to results. I want to also say that I hope everybody on this phone call is safe. I hope you're healthy, and I hope that is the same for all of your loved ones and your friends and colleagues. This is what we're going to do today. We're going to do a quick orientation, mini recap of the session that was in February. We're going to talk about the current situation. And this was scheduled for last week. And then in March, we all figured out that, what was happening. But most of what I put together had been done probably early February, early March. And I think we're going to see that a lot of that still sticks. It's just magnified as we face the situation that we face today. We're going to talk about tools that improve uncertainty. At the end of the day, I'm a software guy, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. We're going to lean a little bit on our applications, but those are just because that's what I know. If there's others out there that you're comfortable with, then that's what you should use. I just want to show you kind of the way we're looking at things. We'll do some Q&A, and we're going to be covering these kind of big muscle movements. We were really going to just talk about planning, analysis, project management, reporting, decision-making, but because we're all now dispersed to the winds in many roles, in many industries, I added this employee engagement piece just for a sec. Here's where you are in the FEDTalks series. You heard from Rose Knoxon. We'll do a quick summary of Rose's stuff in a sec. We're here today. You can see what's going to come in September and November. Hopefully those will be live for you. And if you like this, then I follow Bill's lead and suggest that you check out the ISPI.org virtual conference, which is going to go the entire month of May. This should really be great. This is the background for today. We all know this, but now we're feeling it. The world is increasingly interconnected. It's super digital. But in large part, the things performance improvement people do come in flat and what I'll call analog deliverables. That's super inefficient. It's extraordinarily vulnerable. It can harm the client, and it's in the 21st century, it doesn't work. And now that we're sitting in today's scenario, it really doesn't work. So what we're going to do today is we're going to move from concepts that you all know into reality, actions and tools. And you can see the highlights, what I'm going to cover today. These are essentially the same as what you saw in the description on the AU site. I'll just let you take a look at those. All right. I saw this in the news last week, and I thought it was important to what we do. And you can read it. The key is that you have a professional who understands his business and sees his role as getting evidence, data, to key people who need to make decisions. think that is germane to what we're trying to do, because we cannot mess around anymore. I think, and again, I don't want to be Nostradamus here, but the reality is our lives are probably dramatically changed from here on out. And it's going to be very important if we can kind of stick with the Dr. Fauci quote and consider ourselves as performance improvement leaders, but more organizational physicians, people who are trying first to do no harm, but then trying to improve the health and the strength, the capability of organizations. And today's also about these three things: regaining the momentum that we might have lost with this shelter in place situation, extending our reach, and how do we extend our influence from where we sit today? And then achieving, not just achieving results, but actually showing people the results that we've achieved for them. We're going to do that through a set of tools that, again, just for today's conversation, we'll refer to as organizational telemedicine. So this whole notion of us as professionals who can really take care of the health of organizations. And no matter what level you're at today, if you're a performance improvement leader, people need you more than ever before. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm a little clumsy with my mouse. The stuff that I'm going to share with you today is really based on about 35 or so references. Why am I showing it to you in microfont? Because I just wanted you to know that it's all here. And when you get the handout, if you go so far as to do that through AU, then you'll see these references and many more. But I just want you to know this isn't just somebody spouting off. I want to start today by defining uncertainty for the purposes of this conversation. What we're not going to do today, we're not going to talk about type A and type B uncertainty. We're not going to talk about statistical calculations. We're not going to talk about probability distributions. We're just going to talk about uncertainty as imperfect information, because that impacts some of the key things that we need in order to drive our organization's strategy, planning, decision-making, action. You can see some of the related concepts, some of which we'll touch on today. But practically, everybody on this call is probably thinking things like, do I have a job? What's it going to look like when I go back? What's my organization going to look like? And what am I going to do? What do I need to do differently? All important. Sorry about that. Here's the image a lot of people have gotten in the past from performance improvement professionals. When we show up, things are slow. We have to change that perception. We need to move at the speed organizations move at. And when we ask for information, it has to show that it's going to go someplace. People say, where is that? Where's the information going? Where is all those interviews going? Where is all of that data going? It goes into a black hole, and people never see it again. So they lose confidence in their performance improvement teams. I mean, analyses can take years to do. And by the time you get done with it, the problem has changed. So we have to change these perceptions. Now let's recap February a little bit. There were two useful concepts, there were more than that, but there's two that I'm going to focus on today that were very useful in the presentation that Rose Knoxon presented in February. One was this notion of a performance architecture. There's a lot of different models out there. This one's really good. This is from ISPI. But the question becomes, how do we implement it? There's a lot, this looks nice and neat, and we know that once you get inside of an organization, that's not the case. So that's one. Another one is the behavior engineering model. This is a really good one. It comes from the work of Tom Gilbert, who wrote a book called Human Competence Engineering Worthy Performance back in the 70s. I don't know if it's true or not, but my guess is, just knowing some other models, that this may stem from the 1960s work of Harold Levitt. He had the diamond model. You might remember the diamond change model. It had 4 components to it: people, tasks, structures, and technology. That ended up getting morphed in the 1990s to this people, process, and technology mantra that you hear a lot. And the unfortunate part about that transformation is it leaves out structures. So it leaves out organizational structures, it leaves out tools, it leaves out a lot of stuff. This is a nice model because you've got environmental stuff going across the top, you've got individual stuff, that is stuff you hire for, down here. But the question still, how do we implement it? All right, so we'll look at a few tools that help you actually do this stuff. First one, going back to performance architecture. When you break it down, it really looks like this. There's 4 things going on. There's a planning piece. Not only what do I want to do, but how well should, or what are we aiming for, the desired performance. When we have a gap, can we get stakeholder agreement? Analysis, which is a huge part of this model, and it's the part that everybody hates. And look, I'm going to probably shoot pretty straight here, so apologies in advance if apologies are required. And then we move from selecting those solutions into actually doing something. And there's a lot of somethings going on in an organization. So the question becomes, how do you manage across boundaries? And then there's reporting, decision making. You've got to have a smart way to execute and integrate this stuff. Now, the behavior engineering model, when people hear it, here's basically what they're saying. What do you want me to do? What do I do it with? What do I get for doing it? Do I know how to do it? Am I the right person for the job? And do I feel like it? What's kind of neat about that is it aligns with the way your brain works. So there's 4 motivational switches going off in your head every time that you're presented with a goal. And those switches, they're yes, no's, and they work in the exact same order every single time. So as soon as you hit a no switch, the willingness to do a particular task or goal is pretty much shut off. So first one, do I understand what's being asked of me over here? What do you want me to do? If you understand it, the next question is self-efficacy related. Can I do it? That's skills and knowledge. Am I the right person for the job? That's physical, mental, emotional capability to perform. And then we'll call this third switch self-efficacy number 2. That is, can I do it? Will I be permitted? In the form of, does the environment, is it going to support me? Is my organizational environment going to support me? Does a leader support me? Do I have the resources, etc.? And then you get down to the all-important, do I feel like it? And this, when you think about these switches, this is what drives a lot of people's bucket lists. It certainly drives what we do at work. And our lists are constantly changing because, sooner or later we're going to get in here and these last 2 switches kind of get in our way. How much do they get in our way? Well, here's, we've talked about 4,000 people over the last few years. And when we ask them to think about a performance issue and the one thing they need in order to perform better across domains and across job levels or job titles, you get this sort of breakout. And again, remember now we've got ranges here that are kind of wacky because you're dealing with a range of people in different places. About a third of the time people say, I don't really know what people want me to do. Another third or so, I don't have the tools to do it. 10 to 12% of the time, I don't get anything for doing it. I don't know how. Then down here in the middle, and maybe I'm not the right person for the job. Not very often does that happen. And then down here, you're really getting clinical. Do I feel like it? And in this particular cell, if somebody ever says that to you, it's worth asking, well, why not? And they may say something like, well, I just don't have the tools to do it. So it's not really a motives problem, it's a tools problem. Anyway, question becomes still, how do we implement? And that's important because when you think about the solutions organizations are mostly presented with, they're these big five, I'll call them: training, process improvement, organizational redesign, strategic planning, culture change. Bosses love this stuff and consultants love it. They take a long time to do. It costs a lot of money. And yet they're missing half the model. What about incentives? What about picking the right people? What about motives? There's a lot going on in this beyond these five solutions. And the key is to dig down into them and find out what you can do better, faster, cheaper. Because this model really looks like this. There's hundreds of things we can do. There's a lot of reasons. We'll call those horizontal reasons. I didn't mark it on here, but this is what those horizontal lines are. Reasons that we need to do something. Hey, I'll get to, when I see some people popping up with questions and things, we'll get to those in a minute. And then there's organizational complexity. So what you decide to do in an organization of 30 people is a lot different than something you'll do for 300 or 3,000. So we have to have a smart way of sorting through the options, because there's only a few, we'll call them prescriptions, that match certain organizational ailments. This is important now because this global issue is not just going to get solved with hand sanitizer and masks and ventilators. Every day on the news, we're hearing about the data that people don't have. And folks like us, folks like you, have got to find ways of getting the right data, whether it's this issue or some other, in the hands of the right people. Because right now, a lot, going back to that flattened analog, when you look at the way the CDC recommends managing infection control, they put out a lot of good manuals, they put out a good PDF form, but they're flat. The reporting requirements are monthly, so the data that you're getting may be 1 or 2 months old. When I say you, I mean CDC. This should be something better and faster, something easier for people to do. Because in this situation, this is not going to work. It's not working. So before we go any farther, that's kind of the preamble to getting started. Want to see if anybody has any questions. Bree, do you want to kind of curate those?
Yeah, so we don't really have any questions at the moment, but we can wait maybe a minute or two to see if anyone wants to hop in. You can either send the questions directly to me in the chat and I'll read them for you, or you can use the raise your hand feature, and then someone from the key team will unmute you so you can talk to Dr. Hill yourself. But just to go over who we have a lot of people with us today. At most, we had about 143, and I'm sure it's going to continue to grow as we go further into the presentation. But we have people from the Coast Guard, someone calling in all the way from South Africa to join us today. And just to note, yes, this session will be recorded and posted online. And someone from Virginia. So we have people from everywhere joining us today. And again, please send in your questions so we can get to you as soon as possible.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to pause a couple more times as we go through this, just to do what we just did there. All right, so that's the kind of starting point, the models that we face and the challenges that we're facing. Here's a biggie. And this, for years, the last 2 or 3 years, well before March 17th, which I'm going to call the demarcation line, since that's when we were all told to stay home. People have been looking at the future of work. And I've got a few organizations here, but there's many, many more. And you probably sit in organizations that have their own breakout group, like the Australian Institute has a center for the future of work. If you're in government, the Chico Council is looking at it. So there's a lot going on in government and in the private sector related to this notion. And what's it mean? Well, here's a few references again down in the lower left. And you all can look at those references and you might pull out different highlights. Here's the main. Not only will jobs change, jobs are changing as we sit here. And I'm going to tell you that, the folks that are the 80-hour work week folks, they're finding out their jobs are a lot different. So it means, work is going to be more distributed, seeing it. Information is more open, we're seeing it. Information, our organizations are going to be more virtual. That's absolutely happening. But I think you're also going to start seeing these things: caring, openness, more neighborly. We're definitely seeing when you make people, when you allow people to work remotely, more and more power is distributed. And what you'll also see, we're kind of sitting here, and this isn't robotics, but it's certainly a mechanism for communicating. We're going to see more and more machines, more and more technology in our workplaces. And those are also going to be cognitive technologies, ways to make us think differently. And that's going to also cause us to look at what I'll call the human parts of work, because those are going to be important. We can automate certain stuff, but people are still going to be absolutely critical. And performance improvement people have got to be able to parse this stuff out. Now, what about job growth? How do we, as performance improvement professionals, need to look at jobs and job growth? This is how it looks in our valley. This comes from a guy named Steve Levy, who's an amazing resource, an economist over in Palo Alto. And he gets a lot of credibility around the state. He says, and we're right in the middle of this right here, right? 2001. This is what it's going to look like. My hypothesis is that based on the current situation, this U is going to be much more pronounced. And when you think of other locales that also have a really strong knowledge economy, Northern Virginia, Maryland outside DC, New York, Boston, Atlanta, all of these places, we're all looking at this. So what are we going to do about it? Because this does not bode well for the middle class. And what's it mean for the future of performance improvement? Well, what it means is, going back a couple of slides, is a lot of stuff can be automated. Industry knowledge, it should all be online. Data collection, easy. Analysis of that data, electronic. When you do that, you can drive down the bias. Consensus building, easy to do online. But as you get further and further down here, project management, people need to start creeping in here, and empathy, that's 100% a people thing. But we can take those great people, tie them to the technology, and this is what we'll get. So the question becomes, what do we do? And what I would ask you to consider is something we'll call the augmented future. People and the right technologies. And when you can do that, your personal cachet is going to go way up. The value of your organization is going to go way up, and the value of your customers are going to go through the ceiling. But we've got to know where those tools are and how to use them. Because here's what leaders are telling us. I can't see. I need ways to visualize the complexity of my organization. I need better ways to promote buy-in. You can see these other things. I need a way to synchronize. And really what I need is somebody to help me shape my investment decisions, because I'm waiting over here on the right. I'm waiting for somebody to walk in my office and help me create business cases that are going to drive my organization to be super effective. And the reason these guys need this, guys, I'm going to use a generic term here, is because even when our economy was rocking, which was at the beginning of last month, people are being asked to cut costs. And we're hearing as much as 40%. And the challenge people have, this is all business. And, a lot of times we get in this performance improvement stuff and we're thinking, oh, it's all going to be about some kind of process design or, some training program. So this is money related. And what stakeholders, end users, all these guys want to know, these people want to know, is am I getting the best solution? That is the right solution in the fastest time at the best value. Because if I'm not, my performance improvement people are not helping me. So what we have to present is a better way of managing programs and resources. And here's, for all of you who are in the federal government, here's why. This is what you're operating under right now. There is no wiggle room. And not only that, but here's our budget, a fourth of which, 20%, is debt. Here's our total debt. And we've just added $2 trillion to that last week with another trillion or so on the way. So that money's coming from someplace. And here's where it's going to come from. So this was a pre-COVID-19 proposed budget in January. And this is what the administration said is going to happen. And even before the change happened was foisted on us, I was going to propose to you these two questions. What's most likely and what's most dangerous? Well, we may be sitting pretty close to most dangerous right now. So as performance improvement professionals, people are going to be asking you, how do we get better with fewer resources? Because these red lines are probably going to get longer, and these blue lines may get shorter, if that's even possible, especially when you're right in here. That's the reality. And where are the efficiencies? It's probably at the top of this graph, knowledge-based services. Here's a challenge with that. Almost all knowledge that we have on a day-to-day basis is inside people's heads. And according to Morgan Stanley, there is no data related to day-to-day transactions, none that we can get to. So this is just DOD. And why DOD? Because they're easy to find data on. 32 billion in 2016, which is the best I have data for. But if we're going to cut this, what's it really mean? It means info and expertise that's going to be walking out the door. So there has to be a better way of capturing that stuff. And when we start making change in the organization, we're going to be faced with three challenges. Because we're all going to want to do stuff, but we run the risk of misdiagnosing issues. And organizational physicians cannot do that. We've got to get it right. We cannot be biased in our solution selection process. Let's just take a pause for a second and think again, sticking with this whole medical analogy. When you go to the doctor and you say, this is what my issue was, what I think my issue is, the doctor doesn't take that at face value. If you have a cold, nobody really cares. You can do anything you want to fix that. It's low threat. And so if you want to mess around with chicken soup, or you want to take aspirin, or you want to take something else, good for you. But if you have cancer, you want to know. And you want to know fast. And then you want to be sure that that doc is giving you the absolute right solution set. he doesn't, or she doesn't say, oh, this vendor came in yesterday and was selling this XYZ potion. You ought to try that. They absolutely do not do that. And we cannot be biased in our solution selection process. We've got to diagnose these things right. We've got to put them in place. And then we've got to ensure that they're implemented. What's the number one issue in medicine? Patient non-compliance. So what happens? We get all kinds of change management models. Some sort of success process. And if we operate in a scientific field or even quasi-scientific, why do we have so many methods? Here's what that looks like. I thought that this would be good to kind of just put on one chart. And by the way, these are in the ballpark. I might be off by a decade or so. But what's going on here? Everybody swears every one of these worked at one point. And my hypothesis is this. A lot of it is missing the core science. So an approach that I'll suggest to you in your own organizations, because everybody on this call is a little bit different. Take the core science, match your language and processes. And when you can do that, you've got a home run on your hand because people will do it. If you get, talent management, if you get, the 7 habits, if you try to implement that word for word, it's just not going to work because it doesn't fit your organization. It doesn't fit your culture. It doesn't fit the way you talk. But this does. Core science will always fit. So if you can take this and apply it to the way you all work, it's a homer. The challenge is it's hard to implement models by mouth alone. And we don't really have any good tools. Spreadsheets, there are millions of these floating around Washington, D.C., and there's some expert on every one of them. And when that person goes on vacation, it's trouble. You've been in people's offices where they've got 20 years of binders behind their desk. Nobody's ever going to look at that stuff, but there's probably a ton of info in there. Slideware, no good. One-time use, takes a week to put it together. The boss uses it once and then it goes in the drawer. And then there's a lot now, social apps where people are just chatting under the notion of project management, but it really is just a continuous stream of chats. The challenge you have is not distributed, not secure. It takes way too much work. So we got to have a different approach. What we advocate for here is an approach that makes things easy, something, again, driven by data. And some folks on the phone may know that I think I was one of 3 private sector leaders to testify to the Commission on Evidence-Based Policy Making. And that was a real eye-opener. A lot of times we look for super big solutions, especially, when you're talking about big government and commissions like that. But there's a lot of small tools that you can implement. And the key is to be sure that those are integrated. Because what you're trying to do ultimately is empower teams, and that means being able to have cross-boundary communications. You want to reduce risk. It goes back to our uncertainty. Then you've got to save time, and ultimately we have to show. Provide is one thing, but showing that we have value is something else. And when we do that, then you're getting a good culture. And the reason we take this approach goes back to the book that Bill mentioned. This is not hawking a book, by the way, because you can, if you're a Kindle Prime user, you can get it for free on Amazon. And if you're not, I think it costs like $4 or something. It's a 60-page book. And it's 60 pages because I wanted executives to read it. If the key here is that we have to push power down. And the other key is that we have to protect leaders from themselves. My doctoral research was on the topic of executive overconfidence, and my research question was brilliant in its complexity. Are executives overconfident? We all know the answer to that. And what is overconfidence? It's too much certainty. So we have to, on one hand, we're talking about uncertainty. On the other hand, we have to be careful that we're not overly certain. That's, again, where data is going to help. What we found here when we were doing this research is you got to give people the right tools, because when you do that, you can give them access to the right information, and something that's unsaid here is the right methodologies. When you give people the right info, you increase their ability to perform, and that gives them confidence. And when you give them confidence, that leads to motivation. And motivation, we're going to call, for the purposes of our conversation today, willingness to exert effort toward a goal. That's going to drive your culture, and what I'll call a new operating model. Culture driven, shaping attitudes and actions, which leads to accomplishments. The cloud's going to help you do that. And it's going to help you because you're going to be able to help leaders answer these 5 questions. You can take a look at them, but while you're reading them, I'll say that it was interesting going back to the then Secretary Mattis confirmation hearings. If you ever listen to those, the entire testimony revolved around these 5 questions. And no matter if you're in defense, if you're in commerce, if you're at USAID, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're at Motorola, Oracle, Google, people are asking these questions.